When my son was in preschool, a teacher who we knew and loved was subbing in his class one afternoon. A group of 3 to 5-year-olds swirled around her in beautiful, organized chaos. She looked up at me with wide eyes and a tired look. She knew that at that point I had been teaching preschool for over a decade, and she said to me, "Colleen, you need an edge to teach preschool." I knew what she meant. It takes someone with a certain energy to keep up with a class full of preschoolers. She wasn't wrong. Teaching preschool can be a little bit like herding cats. The so-called magic years are a fast-moving roller coaster of emotions. One moment, a child will run up to you in full delight. Teacher, I found a worm. There are worms over there." The next moment, you might find yourself being stared down in a standoff with the same child, their arms folded across their chest, their face scrunched up in a protest. This goes on all day long with a large group of individuals all on their own roller coasters. And while someone might need a certain energy to navigate this environment well, showing up as a safe space for children and viewing them with a lens of empathy is something I'm wildly passionate about. I always told my young students that my #1 job was to keep them safe. While I knew they likely thought I was only talking about their physical safety, I knew that making sure they all felt safe with me was equally, if not more important. As an advocate for children, the world I want for my child and all children is one where we all view each other with a lens of empathy so that we can afford each other the opportunity to feel safe. Then each of us can shine as our unique, authentic selves. Teaching kids how to find safe spaces in others and how to be safe spaces for others is the true way to create empathy and change the world. While teaching preschool may be a bit like herding cats, I think there's a lesson we can all learn from our real feline friends. Researchers have been trying to figure out for ages why cats love boxes so much. One theory is that the boxes make them feel safe and secure. There was a study done at the University of Utrecht in the Netherlands called "Will a Hiding Box Prevent Stress in Shelter Cats?" that showed that cats in shelters can experience high levels of stress that can have a major impact on their well-being. The study found that shelter cats who were gifted boxes in their new homes were less stressed than those who weren't, and they adjusted to their surroundings faster. For cats, it seems that a box is a safe space. In fact, when we often hear of safe spaces, we're similar to cats, in that we often think of physical places, buildings, or basements to run and hide. But there's one thing that many of us and those cat researchers often overlook, and it's that true safe spaces aren't actually made of brick or wood. True safe spaces are people, like you and me, with a heartbeat, an open mind, and a willingness to see us for who we are. Yes, cats love boxes, but before they look for the box, they find a safe space person who provides empathy and the comfort for them to enjoy it in the first place. I'm a fan of the way that cats can find safe spaces for themselves, because I share a similar story as someone who grew up in survival mode. My father was both bipolar and schizophrenic, and as an only child, I was often left to figure out this big world and the many mysteries of his mental health struggles alone. My dad was really smart, funny, charming, and charismatic. His mental illness gave him an altered sense of reality and unpredictable mood swings. Navigating mental health struggles shouldn't feel isolating and scary, but it often does. I'm sharing this with you today for 2 reasons. One, I want you to know why I feel it's so important to know how to find safe spaces in others and how to learn to be a safe space for others. And 2, I was 39 years old before I ever heard another person say that they have a schizophrenic parent. Hearing that I wasn't alone was life-changing for me. It set me free to be my true, authentic self to stand before you today. Navigating the fear, secrecy, stigma, and weight of mental illness alone is not only confusing and heavy, but it's also deadly. which is why it's rare to hear from people like me. In fact, according to a study done by the Medical University Karolinska Institute in Sweden, offspring of parents with schizophrenia had a significantly increased risk of suicide. This really got me thinking about what actually helped me to not only survive, but to thrive. And I realized that my ability to know when someone is a safe space has saved me and given me the opportunity to help others save themselves as well. Knowing how to seek safe spaces in others and be one for others not only changes lives, it can save lives. Finding safety and support in the people around us is the key to us creating empathy for each other and bringing more peace into the world. Since I am a fan of the way that cats can find safe spaces for themselves, I'm going to ask you to think of the word cat, one of the first words that many of us learn how to spell, when I walk you through this method of finding safe spaces in humans. Because we need one another, now more than ever before. C is for cat, because C is for comfort, because a safe space person feels like wrapping up in a warm blanket. I invite you to stop here for a minute and think of a person in your life who gives the best, most warm and comforting hugs. The way that person can make you feel when they wrap you up in love is the kind of effortless comfort that I'm talking about. Comfort is a vital part of our human development. Yet, if it's so vital, why don't we teach children how to find it? Why don't we ever clearly discuss what it looks like, sounds like, or feels like? We often spend so much time lecturing our children on stranger danger and how to identify when someone seems to be bad news or scary, and not enough time teaching them how to identify stranger comfort. Years ago, as a middle schooler, I was visiting my father during a time when he was hospitalized for his mental illness. At an age where all kids are sensitive and everything is complicated, I felt myself growing more and more uncomfortable in this environment. I meticulously scanned the room, looking for safe spaces in the people around me, knowing full well that I was going to come up short. I was in the midst of chaos, and it was crushing me. Luckily, a hospital staff member unlocked one of the exit doors to leave the room. I was able to slip behind them unnoticed. I made my way down the hall, and I ducked into a small room. I'd gone there for the payphone hanging on the wall. That phone was my lifeline to my safe spaces. I'd use it to call my friends who never knew where I was calling from, but who always offered me a much-needed escape from chaos simply by offering their words. The hospital atmosphere had me feeling on edge, and I felt the panic start to rise in me as I dialed the familiar number. This feeling instantly subsided when my friend picked up the phone on the other end. Her voice was an effortless comfort to me. Her voice offered kind acceptance. Her voice was clear of judgment. Her voice always had time for me. Most importantly, her voice comforted me and allowed her to be a safe space for me by never forcing me to talk about my home life. Her voice was a consistent comfort in a world of chaos. My friend didn't need to know my full story in order to show up for me as a safe space in this big way. In fact, it would be over 25 years later before I ever shared my full truth with her. We might think we need to know someone's story in order to view them with empathy and provide them with open-minded kindness, but we really don't. As an educator of young children, I knew that each and every child in my classroom brought with them a unique story to school each day. I also knew I'd never know the details of many of those stories. Being extremely aware of this, I always tried to show up in a way where I demonstrated empathy, love, non-judgment, and open-minded kindness towards my students. Modeling this kind of empathy helped the little world of our classroom become a space where everyone felt safe, comfortable, and free to be their true selves. When you scan a room, a person who provides you comfort will bring you peace, not chaos. You'll feel at ease. Even the sound of their voice can often bring you joy. A is for acknowledge, because a safe space person will always remind you that you matter. The next thing you want to look for in a safe space person is someone who acknowledges you. People who are safe spaces not only acknowledge you, but they do so with empathy. They acknowledge you and you feel seen. The important thing is that not only are you not judged, but you feel seen through a lens of empathy. People who are safe spaces put themselves in your shoes. Safe space people allow you to be all versions of yourself, even the dark, most challenging, and hard to understand versions. When you show up for someone as a safe space, it sometimes means that you sit with them in times of chaos or through their pain. When conducting a scan, ask yourself, who leans in and offers emotional support without judgment? Who sees me without judgment, blame, or shame? Those are your safe spaces. Being a safe space for my dad throughout my childhood and supporting him in his mental health journey gave me a high level of empathy for those around me and a unique lens that has afforded me the gift of really seeing people and making them feel seen. Being a safe space for my students during their challenging moments at school was always an important part of my job as an educator. I remember one school year when I learned just how important it is for all of us to be acknowledged for who we are inside, even on our tough days. One of my young students, for the purpose of this talk, we'll call her Jasmine, was having a difficult time every day when it was time for our class to come inside after playing outside. As the other children rushed to clean up and gathered to be called inside, Jasmine would find a space away from the group and sit down and protest, silently refusing to come inside. One day, she sat under a table, the next at the top of the slide, another day in the middle of the sandbox, the next day on top of a snow pile. In the busyness of being a teacher, it would be easy to look at Jasmine's behavior and only see it as disruptive and an annoyance in the day. Of course, a child refusing to come inside does cause disruption in the flow of the school day, and my colleagues and I would look at each other trying to decide what to do. I knew that not only was Jasmine watching to see how we would react, but the other 20-something children were watching too. The important lesson that I wanted my students to learn in these moments was one of empathy and compassion. We decided not to rush Jasmine inside or scold her for what she was doing. Instead, my co-teacher and I took turns sitting next to her wherever she was. We knew that Jasmine needed a safe space in those moments. And as we sat with her, it became clear that this wonderful child was showing us in a very concrete way that she needed to feel seen and heard. She was brave enough to show us that she was feeling invisible. We all feel invisible from time to time, and we don't always have the words to express exactly what we need. As the days went on, our relationship with her grew until one day, she no longer felt the need to refuse to come inside. I knew that we had been a safe space for Jasmine, and in those moments, we had acknowledged her and allowed her to feel seen and heard without judgment. Being an educator is an enormous responsibility. In addition to meeting the many educational needs of students, teachers are caregivers for a room full of children. Each and every child is somebody's heart. When I looked at Jasmine, I knew that was somebody's heart sitting under the table. That was somebody's heart sitting at the top of the slide. That was somebody's heart sitting in the sandbox. That was somebody's heart sitting in the snow. This is something that we can all try to remember in our daily interactions with other people. Everybody is somebody, just like you. Look for people who acknowledge you with empathy and care, no matter what. Those are safe space people. T is for team, because a safe space person will offer support and have your back. One way that we can support children in seeking and being safe spaces is to let them know that we're looking out for them as a member of their team. In times of chaos, it's necessary for us to observe the behaviors of others around us to decide who's a safe space and who we can trust to help us in a given moment. A safe space person might make a simple comment that lets you know that they are choosing you, that they are on your side. A safe space person will look out for you and have your back in some kind of way. Sometimes people will feel safe with each other when they have a shared experience, even with strangers. It's as if you're forming some kind of safety alliance. It's as if you're forming a new team together. A person who's open and inviting in this way is letting you know that they think you are trustworthy. When someone is a safe space, they automatically show you some type of support. It could be a smile, a friendly laugh, a head nod, a knowing look, or eye contact with kind eyes. Do not underestimate simple social cues like a head nod. When scanning an environment looking for safe spaces, pay attention to the body language of those around you. Who looks open, warm, and friendly? Who has taken the time to acknowledge you with a head nod or a knowing look from their kind eyes? Pay attention to all these small acts and gestures. They can add up and help you find a safe space person in most environments. Imagine if we lived in a world where people made the conscious effort to show up for one another as a safe space. What if we all tried to view each other through a lens of empathy, acceptance, and non-judgment? What if we taught our children how to look for safe space people in the world and how to be a safe space person in the world for others? What would it look like to model and teach open-minded kindness? When children feel comforted, acknowledged, and part of a team, they can truly shine as the best versions of themselves and show up for others in a supportive way too. My father's no longer with us, but I learned so much about the beauty and importance of people through my journey as a little girl trying to survive my father's mental illness. One thing I know for sure is that people have consistently offered me forms of kindness. And as I live, it is my goal to scan the room and recycle that kindness by being a safe space for someone else. You are never alone. And if your mind ever tries to trick you into believing you are, scan the room like a cat and look for comfort, acknowledgement in your team. But there's also a responsibility that comes with scanning. In the moments when you don't need to scan for safety, scan for support. Be a safe space and offer comfort, acknowledgement, and to be on someone else's team. Safety is not only found in places, it's also in people. Teaching kids how to find safe spaces in others and how to be safe spaces for others is the true way to create empathy and change the world. Thank you so much.